You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast, of course, presented to you by FanDuel, CLNS's official sports wagering partner. Go to FanDuel.com/Boston to sign up today. And today's episode, it's your boy Pat Lane, as always, with my guy Matt St. Jean. And Matt, a lot has happened since we talked on Thursday. Of course, Bill Belichick was let go, but Jerod Mayo is now the head coach of the New England Patriots. How do you feel, sir?
I feel pretty good about this. I think I like the process of it. I like that internally they said this is our guy and we're going for it. You got you at any point you can pull the plug on the Bill Belichick culture and say we want another guy. You only had one opportunity to try and keep it going with somebody in the building, and I like that they're trying it. We've seen former players, guys who were recently in the pros do well. Young guys do well. We've seen guys who were players under Bill Belichick do well. And I don't have any qualms at all about hiring a defensive head coach. I think that's totally fine. It's just you got to be more pressure on the offensive staff, but that was going to be there regardless. So the guys seem fired up about it. I'm ready to run through a brick wall because of that. And I had a moment earlier today, and I was like, "Wait, when did they announce what the preseason games are?" Like I'm already in that mode.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's I will say, I just think, obviously it's sad to see Belichick go. And there's part of me that is upset when, if you're listening to this in podcast form, it's already out. But if you're watching us live, I have an article dropping tomorrow on Pat's Pulpit, basically ripping Kraft. Because I just don't love the way this has been handled. And I know you and I, Matt, have gone back and forth on this, but some of the things that have been said about Belichick on the way out, and the way that, things just miraculously dropped. Like, all these reports didn't come out. Now all of a sudden they're all just coincidentally coming out as soon as he leaves. It just kind of makes him sound shitty. And, even like Robert saying, well, he didn't have full control until after 05. And it's like, well, you've been saying that he's getting full credit for everything, and now all of a sudden he doesn't. And so those are the things that I don't love to see. And listen, I understand that there's that whatever, but I don't love the fact that they're just kind of promoting Mayo and then and they're not hiring her GM, so they're just kind of doing it all over again. And here's the thing, right? This was the argument for the Mac Jones. This is why I was always scared about Mac Jones. What are the chances you're going to find another Tom Brady? Well, the chances that you're going to find another Tom Brady are not very good, right? And so you drafted a guy that plays like Tom Brady, and then you're going to say, okay, well, he's just going to be the next Tom Brady. And I'm like, that just doesn't work. Now you're going to hire a guy and you're going to give him control just like Bill Belichick. And he's a defensive guy just like Bill Belichick. And he got drafted by Belichick, and he's only coached for Belichick. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be a Belichick clone, but then you're going to give him all the power like you gave Belichick. And I just like finding another Belichick. I don't know how you can bet on that.
See, I interpret the chain of events differently than you do, and I think somebody in the chat asked the perfect question to kind of lead into this. Shout out Berg. He says in the chat here, what do you guys think of Bill's kids being offered to stay? I think it's easy to look at some of the media reports we've seen since the mutual parting of ways that happened and assume, as Boston fans, looking at what often happens with the Red Sox, and see this is another Boston guy getting trashed on his way out of town. That, to me, does not mix with the press conference that you saw with Bill and Kraft kind of almost tearing up and hugging each other and everything. And what Berg mentions about Bill's kids being offered to stay, I don't think they would even consider it if they thought somebody in the organization was going behind Bill's back to leak things to make him look bad in the press. I don't think that would be on the table at this point. I think what we've seen is that it was a mutual parting of ways, which means that both sides wanted this to happen. That means the Krafts did want Belichick out. And based on the reporting we've seen, if it's accurate, there's good reasons for that. Yeah, I don't love an owner meddling in football affairs. When the head coach wants to keep Matt Patricia on for a second season as offensive coordinator because he thought it was going better by the end, that is an appropriate time to intervene. I didn't have an issue with that if that's what's happened here, and I think we all look at the last couple of years. We've all seen it. Drafting has had good moments. On the whole, has not been good enough. Free agency has had good moments. On the whole, has not been good enough. The coaching job has been largely good, but has had some serious weak spots for the last couple of years. And you couple that with the results on the field and the fact that this is going to be a multi-year rebuilding effort, and the parting of ways made sense. Bill Belichick is the greatest of all time, and he also dug himself a hole with some of this stuff, and I don't think it's unfair to criticize him for that. I don't think that's trashing him on his way out of town. And I think the fact that he did a good job and just made bad decisions in there, like it seems like the process was good, the decisions and the results weren't. So keeping the essence of the process while shifting to different people, younger people, people with different, similar but different experiences to take that process and interpret that in their new way. I really like that approach to it. And I don't think you're expecting Mayo to be the new Bill Belichick. I think you're expecting him to be Jerod Mayo, a player's coach who goes out there and fires up his guys and gets them to rally behind them. The players talk about him very differently than they've ever talked about Bill Belichick, and they talk about both with respect.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And the GM stuff, I'm going to wait and hold off before I have an opinion on it.
Right.
If they go into the season and there's clear disarray in the front office, I'm going to be very upset. That can't happen. But if the people inside the building knows what are going on, I don't really need to care if somebody has a GM title. If everybody knows what their roles are and there's a hierarchy that they all understand, I don't care what the titles are.
Right.
Oftentimes the GMs and the front office stuff gets sorted out after the draft too, because all of the scouts and people, this is like mid-season for the scouts.
Right.
This is so they don't
Their
get
contracts run out after the draft too.
And if you brought in like an external GM right now and asked them to make draft decisions, it gets a little bit more difficult. And then, we've heard reporting about issues in the draft room and issues between the scout side and the front office about information being relayed, and all of the reporting and the actions taken by the front office, by the ownership, scream here that they think the processes were good, the decision making wasn't. So we're going to keep the processes intact, but change the decision makers. So in the draft room, instead of being Bill Belichick, it's going to be Matt Groh or Elliot Wolf or whomever they decide to have there. When it comes to game planning, it's going to be Jerod Mayo instead of Bill Belichick, and you go from there.
Right. Well, and I did say it on the show, and if you're an avid listener, you want to go back and find the clip, but I'm not going to go back and find the clip. But I did say that maybe the scouts are doing a good job, and Belichick is just disagreeing with them, in big instances, right? And it seems the hard part for me is that you look at the things that happened, right? The N'Keal Harry situation being the perfect example. Okay, N'Keal Harry gets drafted by the Patriots. Well, it comes out after Belichick gets fired or whatever the term is, after Belichick leaves, that the scouts really wanted A.J. Brown or Deebo Samuel. Well, that's really easy to say now. Really easy to say now.
That didn't come out after Belichick was fired. That came out in 2021.
Okay, and I hadn't. Again, it was one stuff, and so
it was one pre-draft piece in 2021 from Albert Breer that it was put in, and I don't blame you for not seeing it, because there's been a lot of like under the radar things that reports that got one mentioned somewhere but didn't catch on beyond it, that now are all suddenly coming back out at the same time.
Right. And so that's the thing. And look, I think we'll be okay. I do. They got to get a quarterback. They got to get a quarterback, and they probably have to get another wide receiver. Well, not probably. They have to get another wide receiver, and they have to fix the offensive line, whatever that means. Whether that means, I hope it means keeping on Wenu, and kind of going from there. And so, look, we'll kind of see what happens. Now, I do think Jerod Mayo has the chance to be a very good head coach. I think we've seen look, you see a guy like Dan Campbell, right? And Dan Campbell has gotten a ton of shit for years, right? And he's a joke and he's laughing and blah, 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 and, biting ankles and all this other crap. But like what he brings to the table is love for his team and his players. And he's serious about that. And he talks about that. And Jerod Mayo, there's some old podcast clips of him, and I don't remember the show, and I didn't recognize the show that he was on, but talking about the players and talking about dealing with players and how you need to treat them with love and respect and come from that place. And I think that works. You can see Mike McDaniel doing the same thing in Miami. Of course, Miami's fallen flat on their face the last 2 years at the end of the season. But
that's not coaching. I'll tell you that much.
Well, and that's the thing,
games,
right? And so it gets to a point where you look at it and say, is this the way that can we win with this type of coach? And I think that we can. And I myself look forward to the fact that we're going to have a young coach. We're going to have a young black coach. Like I think that's a great thing. I think that's a great thing. I think he's interviewing defensive coordinator who might be black, or who is black, but who knows if he'll get the job or not. He's interviewing a special teams coordinator, right? That's a black man. Like the fact that these guys we've had a little bit of that here, a little bit, but not a ton, right? And the fact that they're able to see, and we always talk about this in education. We always talk about this, that like there's just not enough. You know what I mean? Like I have 35 teachers in the math department. In my math department, in my high school, I have 35 teachers. We're a very, very diverse school. Zero of the 35 teachers in the math department are black. And so it's like, it's important. That's important to have. And so it's like, you can't, if people don't apply, it's tough, but it's nice to have that, in the team.
Well, and especially, I think one of the key things with a Jerod Mayo type, you want buy-in from your organization, from everybody all around,
right.
Players, coaches, front office people. Jerod Mayo was a guy who came into the organization, was drafted, played well, and then was given the opportunity. Actually, I hadn't realized this until this week, was begged to take the opportunity to coach by Bill Belichick, who kept going to his wife and saying he was born to coach. He needs to be in this. And you get that kind of buy-in internally that, regardless of race or anything like that, you can come in. He provides that role model internally for everybody on the team to say, hey, if you're good at this, not only are we going to buy into you as a player, but we're going to buy into you beyond that. We're going to buy into you as a human being. And I think Jerod Mayo, from every interaction we've seen with him, embodies that attitude. He's all love, respect, and that, combined with, being a very, very smart football coach from all the defensive game planning that we've seen. He's also, and as a draft prospect coming out of Tennessee, he was one of the smartest players in the draft coming out of there. And you saw that from day one in the NFL with him. So I can't tell you if Jerod Mayo is going to be a good head coach. It's nobody can tell you if anybody is going to be a good head coach. It's so difficult, but he has a lot of the qualities that I like to see in one. And there's something nice about, if you're going to fail, I'd rather fail going out with a guy you trust and a guy and a guy you respect and a guy who already has good relationships in the building.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And look, part of it is that he can say to the guys, I'm a Patriot for life. I was drafted by the team. I retired as a Patriot. I've never played anywhere else. I've never coached anywhere else. This is my team. This is my home. Right. Yes. And this is what we want to do. And so I think that that's powerful. Megan Onalini just tweeted out. I thought this was hilarious. So Bill Belichick, we got to get back to Bill Belichick here. Bill Belichick has interviewed for the head coaching job and in Atlanta.
Officially announced by the Falcons now.
Officially announced by the Falcons, which is crazy. That's fascinating to me. I thought for sure it would be Dallas. Philadelphia is losing tonight, which we have the game on the background. Someone said that you should be watching the game. We are watching the game. But don't worry. So, but I think Atlanta, we've talked about Atlanta here. I talked about Atlanta months ago, being a good spot for, maybe not months, but a month or so ago, being a good spot for Belichick, because that division sucks, because they have so many weapons on offense. You obviously just need a quarterback. But anyways, Megan tweeted out, Interviewer, thanks for meeting with us, Bill. Can you give an example of a time when it looked like you were totally out of a game, only to rally back and win? It's just
Opening
so
question.
incredible.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Just fantastic stuff.
I don't think it's a coincidence that has been announced at halftime of the Eagles Buccaneers game either.
That's correct.
That very much feels like Falcons are trying to say, hey, back off, because they know the Cowboys are going to be coming.
Right.
And they know if the Eagles do lose this game, I have to imagine they're going to be at least thinking about it, because, you saw Jerry Jones after the game yesterday and the quotes he gave. And it took 10 minutes after the game for the Adam Schefter tweet about how people inside the building have been saying that McCarthy will be judged on whatever his last game of the season is.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. That Jerry Jones just sent him a text saying, yeah, we're going to go another direction here.
Right.
So, and I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up happening with the Eagles the way this is looked down the stretch either.
Yeah.
So,
well, and by the way, Bill Belichick did not interview. Like, he didn't go in and interview. He sat and met with Arthur Blank. Like, they're not saying, hey, where do you envision yourself in 5 years? Like,
he didn't bring a resume and a cover letter.
Correct. Yeah. No, that's not what happened.
I do hope, and you hear the stories about, Bill taking Rodney Harrison to the ground round.
The ground round,
came
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
I hope Arthur Blank took him to a Waffle House or something, and that's where.
That's exactly what he should have done.
Imagine going to a Waffle House on a Sunday morning. You look over, it's Arthur Blank and Bill Belichick in the corner.
You're like, oh, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
So, and listen, we'll see.
I think Atlanta would be a great spot for him, but I think Philly is the best spot if he gets along with the GM, because he's not getting GM power there. Unless they would fire the GM here in Philly, but I can't
imagine they fire Howie Roseman. I can't imagine.
What I will say, a lot of the issues they've had are because they have continually not invested at safety or linebacker.
Right.
And, you could blame it on the GM, but the GM is also the reason why every other spot is pretty good.
Right. And I also think too, would Bill, if you go to a team like Dallas or Philly, let's just say he decided to go to one of those places, does he need GM control? Does he need to, if he and Howie are going to work together, he doesn't need to, it's not a rebuild. No. The team is set, right? You need a few pieces on defense, and we can, and he and Howie can talk about, hey, how do we fix the defense, and how do we make, this a little bit better, or whatever the case may be. But you're set. You have Hurts, you have Smith, you have Brown. What else do you you got the offensive line already? So Jason Kelce might retire, but you know what I mean?
It might be kind of the language of who has final say over the roster type of thing too. Like Howie Roseman may stay as GM, but Belichick gets final say over
things, which is possible. Yeah, which is definitely possible.
And it's I think this is one of the other things too, is that going back to New England and looking at the whole of the last 25 years, including this past week, they have kept this veil of secrecy over everything. It is hard for me to look right now and give an opinion of how I feel about Matt Groh as a future GM for New England, because other than the fact that he's done post-draft press conferences, we don't know exactly what his role is.
Right.
And I also think, Kraft drops the nugget in that parting press conference about how Bill didn't get full control over the organization until after the first 3 Super Bowls. But we also know that when he came in, he wouldn't come to New England unless he had final say over the roster. Right. So the question is, what's in that gap? What else didn't he have control over? What does that full control in that gap span look like? What other people was he relying on for tasks? And then, how does that extrapolate forward to a future job for Bill in another spot, or for the Patriots here? And I believe in the entirety of Robert Kraft's tenure as owner, the Patriots have never had a GM, or at least he hasn't given out that title. So they've and most of that's Bill Belichick, but they haven't really shied away from
Bobby Greer wasn't. You might be right though.
They haven't. I think he was director of player development or something like that. They haven't shied away from non-traditional structures there, and I honestly don't care what the structure looks like as long as it works. I think whether it's a front office guy or a head coach having final say over the roster, I don't really care as long as you guys are on the same page about what you want it to look like.
Right.
At the end of the day, it shouldn't really matter who has the final say, because you should both be seeing eye to eye, and it should be like a marriage. You shouldn't have to fight over the decisions. You're coming to the table both already seeing it the same way, and you go to make roster cuts, and you should probably agree on 52 of the 53 guys already.
Right. No, that's true. That's true. Oh God, they just threw some heinous flag on Tampa. What an absolute joke.
Pat is about a full play ahead of me here, so I'm excited to see what happens.
It's just embarrassing.
I'm gonna guess it roughing the passer. No, he's running.
No, it's the NFL has a serious okay. No, never mind. No, it's offsetting penalties. The NFL has a serious problem with quarterbacks. Protection of quarterbacks is a joke at this point. The Josh Allen thing today is embarrassing. The Josh Allen fakes a slide, which, by the way, I would do on every single play. I'd do it on every play. Why wouldn't you do it on every play? But then he fakes the slide and scores a touchdown. And then the next time he slides and gets hit, because it's like, well, what if he doesn't slide? And and it just is what it is. It's tough, man. It's really tough. So
yeah. And my opinion on this in general, and it extends beyond QB, but it is mostly a QB thing, is that I think that they need to give a little more leeway to the defense on physicality for everything but hits to the head. Hits to the head, we legislate that very closely, because as a defender, even if it's not intentional or malicious or anything, it's your responsibility. If you're in general, if your player's initiating contact, it's your responsibility to keep the head out of it. General rule. Outside of that, I think if you have the ball and you don't want to be hit, it is, for the most part, your responsibility to avoid putting yourself in that situation. That means you go out of bounds. That means you go down far enough away from other players that there isn't really an opportunity for contact. I think if there's bang plays with the defense, we should be letting that play out. And that's nothing annoys me more than the stuff by the sideline. By the way, the slide is one thing, but the sideline is like, I would give basically one foot down out of bounds, allowing a hit there, as long as it's hard to explain. But the way I legislate it is that if both players are staying on their original paths and they would hit in bounds, and then one player changes paths at the last second to go out of bounds and the contact still happens because they're close, that should be allowed, as long as it's, not reckless. And there's going to be a certain degree of subjectivity here. The refs have to make sure that defensive players aren't taking advantage of leeway to intentionally injure opponents. It's not, if you're hitting the quarterback as part of your follow through when he's throwing the ball, that's one thing. If you take 2 extra steps and lower your shoulder into it, and you're not even trying to slow down, it's a very different situation. Even if it would be kind of within the flow of the play, you have to judge intent a little bit somehow, even though that's impossible to do.
Right. It's tough. And it's part of it. I mean, look, it's difficult. I understand that it's difficult to play defense in the NFL as Tampa gets a ridiculous pass interference call. Of course, to give the Eagles a first down, because they got to keep this close. The NFL's got to keep this close, because the last game was the Monday night game, and we got to keep it close. That's
when these refs are not going to be around next. These refs will not be around next weekend, and neither will the ones from the game earlier today. I don't think.
I don't know. I
they're all done for the season after this.
The Julio Jones fumble. I mean, clearly fumbled, and they clearly recovered it. I don't see what the problem was.
I thought that he recovered it while he was on the ground,
but then he never actually held the ball. The ball was under him, but I guess it looks like he may have grabbed his. When you slow it down in super slow motion, he did have his hand on his shoulder, but I don't know if he turned. I mean, it's a whole thing. Look, it just is what it is, right? It's one of those things. I mean, they missed the first one. I'm like, how'd you miss that one?
Yeah.
Right. And so, I guess that was what's it called? That was the first game, the Bills game, when they the Bills Steelers game, was it Najee that fumbled? No, Pickens fumbled.
I don't remember.
They missed it. Then they had to review it. They turned it around. Then Freiermuth fumbled. They missed it again. And then they said, no, it wasn't the ball was out of bounds or something. It's
Okay, so
nothing
I thought that was on the broadcasters because I think he was out of bounds. They just didn't explain it well, because if you're touching somebody who's out of bounds, you're out of bounds. It's the way it works for things like that when it's like a loose ball recovery situation.
I don't think
and
he
you're
was
all on
touching.
the ground.
Was he? You saying he was touching
'Cause he-
Freiermuth when he fell to the ground?
No, when it wasn't him. I think he was touching his teammate who was standing out of bounds while he was recovering the ball or something.
Oh, okay. So maybe you're right.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't see that part of it.
Yeah,
but maybe you're right.
and he was also juggling the ball when he first got it, and you really can't tell when he first gets it. So I also understand why you stay with the call on the field.
Yeah, which is true.
Yeah.
So,
anyways,
whatever.
my
The
biggest-
refs are the refs.
My biggest gripe with officiating too is that the refs can be bad, or they can disrupt the flow of the game, but they can't do both. If you're gonna if you're not gonna be great at it and you're gonna miss calls, do it to a point where the game keeps its flow. But like a game where like every single third down, everybody's looking around for a flag to see if you're gonna advance the ball, it's just not fun for anybody involved.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult sport to ref. There's a lot going on. And I think the NFL could do more to help out the refs, but with the situation we have now, it's got to either be entertaining or high quality. You got to tick at least one of those boxes.
Yeah, and I do think pre-stat penalties, like they missed the was it the Browns game? What the hell game was it that I was watching yesterday? Maybe it was yesterday that I was watching, so it definitely was the Browns, where the guy they called false start, but it was actually offsides.
Oh.
And it was just like
it was like two guys
possibly miss that. And so though pre-snap penalties should be able to be reviewed. If you want to throw, if I want to throw the challenge flag, like for instance, as an example, the Philly special. Okay. Philly special happens, the play gets cut, I throw the flag. That was, that right
legal
there
formation.
Was a legal formation. And they can go back and review that and say, oh, that was a legal formation, 5-yard penalty, no play. And it sounds stupid, but those things matter. Those things that changes the entire game, and it's all because the ref just missed it. Just missed the fact that it was a legal formation, and that's inexcusable to miss that.
And that's one of the areas where they shouldn't miss. And that's again, I'm going to keep calling for it. I think the simplest solution to this is to have a ref in the booth or in the box or whatever, some kind of video ref who has the same officiating power in game as anybody else, who has the ability to call down to the field and say, hey, this happened, or you missed this, or whatever. And that ref, because they're up in a box and should also have kind of TV replay on or whatever, like they can watch replays in live time, should be able to do like the video assist where they call down after play has happened and said, hey, they lined up illegally on that one. We're going to drop a flag and go back.
Right. And so Edward,
and if you do that, and if you do that too, from the TV and viewership perspective, you don't need to go through the whole, we're going to watch the play happen. We're going to watch 2 replays. We're going to cut to a shot of the sideline to see if they're going to throw the flag. Oh, they threw the flag. We're going to bring up the challenge graphic. We're going to go show the replay 5 more times. We're going to go to commercial break. We're going to come back. We're going to find out what happened. Ideally, you get that whole thing done before you even get to the shot of the coach on the sideline.
Correct. Yeah. And so Edward's saying, all plays should be looked at when in question. And I don't disagree necessarily. The problem that I have with that is that you can call holding on every play. You can call pass interference on every play. You can call illegal contact. You can call it all on every play. And so it's like, if you slow it down and look at it enough, you can call anything on any play. Right. And so it becomes really difficult to say, okay, well, was that pass interference or not? Well, I don't know. It was close, but was it? And then we're throwing challenge flags on pass interference. I don't want that. I don't want that. Right.
For the subjective calls, you shouldn't be reviewing those, I don't think.
Right. But like you said, if you have a guy in the booth and the guy gets completely tackled, perfect example. The Hail Mary against the Eagles, where 3 Patriots wide receivers get tackled on the way to the end zone. You're like, well, wait, you can't just tackle the guy. Look, that's a penalty. But I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that litigated. I don't want to see the coach throw a challenge flag, and I don't want to see that. If the guy in the booth can say, "Hey, that was a flag. Throw the flag. Bam, it's done." I got no problem with that.
And I think there has to be a certain kind of common sense barrier applied here too, in that if this infrastructure works and you got enough people in the box, then anything that's obvious you're going to catch. And then if that means that the ones you're leaving out are the ones that are so close that you're okay with that staying. If it's in that 60-40 range or whatever, and we're not quite sure, it's close. So like, all right, we'll leave that. But if it's one of those things where somebody's going to watch it on the TV and go, oh wow, that happened, no flag. Those are the ones we should be catching quickly. And the reverse of it is true. If somebody's throwing a flag on something, but somebody has a better angle, we got to be good about making sure it gets picked up too.
Yes.
That said, I don't think the NFL is going to make serious changes here. They might a little bit, but as long as people are watching, I don't see why they're going to invest more money in this until it starts to impact the media coverage too negatively, impact the number of people who gamble on games, which I don't see that going down anytime soon.
Well, which sucks.
Their numbers are going up, so there's no reason for them to invest more in this.
Which sucks because they have an opportunity to improve the product, and instead of improving the product, they're just staying with the status quo because, well, we're making money. Who cares?
Simpler.
Well, it's just and that's annoying.
And that same argument also goes for the the whole field playing surface discussion. If a well-kept grass field is the best playing surface there is, and all of the teams have the money to do it. So the only reason you wouldn't is because you choose to have a worse playing surface for monetary reasons, which in a lot of these cases has to do with non-football things playing into that. And I think just pushing for more of that.
Guess what?
Somebody noticed that they have a new surface at Gillette Stadium coming in.
Yep.
Guess what? Not grass though, right?
Patriots might be playing on grass full time.
I don't think so. Not yet.
Lionel Messi is coming in April. Messi wants to play on grass. They also want the World Cup, and this is the big one. They want the World Cup. The World Cup, you have to have a grass surface.
Well, it's not just any grass.
You cannot have
there's
grass.
Some super highly regulated types of
Have
grass.
grass on top of turf. You have to have a fully grass field in order to get a World Cup there. And so if Gillette wants a World Cup, if Kraft wants a World Cup, which he does,
well, it's coming. They're already in the thing.
Well, that's what I mean. You know what I mean? So know that's coming. So I do wonder, are you going to go with a fully grass?
I think we all know what's going to happen, though. They're going to do a new turf this year, and they're going to keep that through the World Cup. And after football season ends in 2025, they're going to switch out grass for 2026 for the World Cup and then tear that up and put the turf back down before football season.
Okay. Well, there you go.
That's what I think is going to happen, because at Gillette Stadium, they love having Monster Jam and all the concerts there.
Which is true. That is true.
Yeah. And I think it's a shame, because you look at some of the things they have all the hybrids now, the grass and turf hybrid, that you get the strength of the turf and it doesn't wear out as badly, but you still get the softness and health stuff from the natural grass. And that's what they have in Green Bay, and it's fantastic. And they're able to keep it green all season long and growing. It's just an expensive endeavor. And
Yep, I agree. So, all right. So let's get into, do you want to do, well, we have your mock draft that I want to spend a few minutes on. We also want to talk about the playoffs. Let's take a quick break.
Can we do one more topic before we do that?
Sure.
We had a question in here that mentioned it too, about the Patriots going outside the org to interview for DC and special teams coach.
Yes. Yep.
I have one note on the special teams thing before we go to defensive coordinator. It's actually kind of two notes. The first is that, as far as we know, Joe Judge and Cam Acord still have jobs. Nobody has said that they're fired. So unless their contracts expire, they're still on staff. Yeah. So saying publicly we're interviewing for your replacement, I'm very curious what's going on right there. And I'm sure we're going to find out pretty quickly, whatever happens. Second thing is, this special teams coordinator got a request from the Giants to be their special teams coordinator 3 days ago, and the Falcons refused to let him interview for it. Now the Patriots requested. We're going to find out if the Falcons allow him to be interviewed or not. But now Bill Belichick just interviewed with the Falcons. And I do wonder if this guy has been told in the last 3 days, if Bill comes in, your job's not safe. Right. And maybe now they let him interview for it. I don't know. The Falcons were one spot ahead of the Patriots in DVOA this year on special teams, and they also had a struggling kicker, and their top returner got hurt. So it was basically the exact same situation we had here. And the flip side, I know people in Atlanta love him. One of the Falcons reporters, Tayler Kyles, was talking to, was really bummed at the thought that he might go. So guessing there's something the underlying numbers aren't picking up on him because he kind of keeps getting promoted at all the spots he's at. So that is interesting. And then the defensive coordinator thing, we all kind of assumed that it was going to be Covington coming up. And I know they have to interview outside the organization as well, but I do wonder if this is a guy who ends up on staff in New England in some capacity, and if Covington ends up following Bill too. Yeah.
And I that's a good point. I am interested to kind of see what happens there because Covington is a guy on the rise, right? He was the head coach of the Shrine Bowl game. And so I do think that's going to be, it's going to be a fascinating thing to see where it goes and what happens there. I wonder, like, this guy's got an interesting pedigree. He's coached all over the place. He coached in BC. He's coached in Carolina, which, like, BC, the last year he was at BC was not great. The last year in Carolina was not great. But, like, those two teams had, like, historically bad offenses, both of those teams. And so
the defenses were the issues.
The defenses may not have been great, but when you're put in a bad situation every single drive, it's not ideal, right? And so, but he's coached in a million different places. He's coached in San Francisco. He's coached in like 4 or 5 different places in the NFL, and coached obviously in some different places in college. And so I do think it's interesting to kind of see what he can do and what he can bring in. And at the very least, like you say, what type of player can he? Oh my goodness!
Oh boy, I don't know what I'm about to say. But he played at Colgate. He played at Colgate, and he coached at Rutgers and URI too. So this is a guy who's been all around the Northeast. Oh boy, I feel like this is going to be a pick six of some kind, or maybe a safety.
I love it.
Oh,
it's so good. It's so good. What an absolutely horrendous play by Jalen. I have no idea what in the world Jalen Hurts was thinking. He just was at the 4-yard line and then ran back into the end zone, pump faked, and like, what the hell was he thinking?
And we're gonna that play when we talk about the wild card stuff after the break. We'll have to talk about some stuff because this play is going to start to get into this. But I also want to add, we're talking the coordinator stuff, and before we take a break, Albert Breer had said earlier today, I believe it was Albert Breer, that they're going to look outside the organization for offensive coordinator, and they're going to cast a wide net. So we're hearing stuff slowly start to come in. The Patriots run a tight ship. So I suspect that we're going to hear things when they want us to hear them, and
that's
we're going to get impatient because it's not going to be on our timeline, but it does sound like they are handling this with a lot of care internally, and it might not be what we all want on the outside, but they also are putting a lot of due process into this, and they're letting Mayo have at least us say. We don't know who's making the final calls, but Mayo is part of the decision-making process, and I'm curious to see where they end up landing on this because, you watch that Packers game, and we can get into the Packers game after the break. All of the Packers starters were drafted by Green Bay. Only one of them was taken in the first round, and that was Jordan Love. And that was a guy who went mid to late first, who sat for 3 years or 4 years before he played or whatever it was.
Jaden Reed, Brontavian Wicks. I mean, you go down the line, man.
They got Watson, both of their tackles are day 3 guys. That's what they've managed to get there. So I think you look at that, and that's what a good offensive coaching staff can do for you in good development and a really good organizational vision. You don't have that happen unless you go into the draft knowing exactly what you want, draft for those guys, and then develop them and continue them along that curve. And they've nailed it in a lot of different spots there. So you see that, and I'm not totally against the idea of bringing Bill O'Brien back or bringing in a Josh McDaniels, but I don't think we should be married to that. I think you got to go in with an open mind and go for the guy who you think is the best offensive mind. Go for a guy who you think can
couldn't agree more.
Create an offense and elevate players and has a vision for it.
Couldn't agree more. So, all right, let's take a break and we'll come back and we'll talk about Wildcard Weekend and your mock draft as well. We'll take a quick break and then we'll be back. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays, find bets in the new Explore tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Kentucky, Michigan, New Jersey, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, and Virginia. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelpline.ma.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts. Or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, we are back from break. And this game is getting out of control, and I'm loving every second of it.
I just looked away for a second. Tampa just scored.
Yep, Trey Palmer, 56-yard touchdown. If they show the replay, he just broke one tackle and then see you later.
This is defensively for Philly. This is an organizational failure we're talking about right now.
Oh yeah,
your defensive coordinator leaves. You promote a new guy up. He isn't good. Mid-season, you swap to another guy. And, I think we can blame Matt Patricia for a lot here, and I'm perfectly fine to throw him under the bus at any point.
Right.
But also, you don't get to this point defensively if they're clearly not practicing tackling. I mean, when's the last time these guys had live tackling drills? That's an August issue. This is something you work on in camp, and they can't do it in January.
Right.
They got no attitude on defense. All that goes up to the old defensive coordinator. It goes up to the head coach to a degree. I think it goes up to the GM for the type of guys that they're bringing in. But yeah, that's talk about a turnaround from where they were this point last season. And it falls on the leadership of that team. And why are you swapping a defensive coordinator in the middle of the season like that? And not only that, you're swapping to a defensive, like, for all the issues they had under Desai, he was a scheme fit for the players they had. What Matt Patricia likes to do is not what these players like to do. So now you're trying to run a defensive scheme these guys don't know and haven't practiced cold turkey when it's not a fit for the players midstream. Like, how bad most things have been internally that you thought that was the best option is the question I ask.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, yep. So we'll see. It's so good. I'm a big fan. Big fan of what's going on over there. So, all right, let's get into let's blow through the wild card weekend. I'm sorry, super wild card weekend. Can't think of super there. Super wild card weekend, because it's not just wild card weekend. It's super wild card weekend.
It's such a forced term.
It's so stupid.
I hate it.
It's so stupid. And so the Patriots did something this year that no team had done, and I forget what it was, and it was like 4 times. I forget what it was. It was like it's only been going on for. I forget. I can't remember exactly what it was. They did something, and it was like, yeah, it's happened like 4 times total. And so the Patriots did it. And I for the life of me, can't remember what the hell it was. Anyways, doesn't matter. The Cowboys have now done something that no one else has ever done, and it's only the second or third year of it going, and that means the number 2 seed losing to a number 7 seed. I think we should start there because that one is so much fun to me. I just feel like everyone knew it was coming. Everyone knew it was coming. Everyone knew they were going to suck. And they sucked it, and it was fantastic.
Well, I think the thing that was most shocking to me is that the Cowboys have been a genuinely very good team this year. And that game got out of hand in large part because, like, their first 3 drives ended because their best 3 offensive players all made huge mistakes.
Yep.
And obviously, the defense was super soft, and that's a reason why stalling out at the beginning of the game turns into a 21-0 deficit, or 20-0 deficit. But man, it's just good players coming up super small. CeeDee Lamb has been one of the top receivers in the NFL all season and was the key to this Cowboys offense playing well. At nothing. And then defensively, Stephon Gilmore got picked on at points in this game in man coverage.
Yep.
And that is, wow. I mean, they were Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore were the guys that were supposed to elevate this team. You got Gilmore getting picked on by a rookie, and you've got Brandon Cooks out there getting boxed out by a guy, and the ball gets picked off on a slant. So I just these guys worked in the regular season, and it just melted down in the playoffs. And for once, I actually thought the Cowboys had enough talent to overwhelm that difference, and they got out executed and out coached all at once.
Yeah, it was wild. So that was a fun game. I had Packers +7. You had Cowboys -7. I hit that one, which is nice. We can go back. And by the way, Jordan Love, and I think it was somebody, who the heck was it? I mean, a million people tweeted stuff out, but it was one of our guys, Austin Gale, tweeted out going from Favre to Rodgers to Love is awful. They just send in he said send them to I forget what exactly he said, but it was just ridiculous. The fact that Love looks this good. He doesn't just look good. He looks outrageously good.
The poise that he showed. I mean, I think for me, maybe it's just the Mac Jones effect watching him the last couple seasons, but in some ways, to me, the most impressive trait is when a quarterback can just stand in there, know he's going to get hit, and rip a missile to a receiver.
Yeah.
And how many times in the first quarter alone did it seem like the Cowboys had him dead to rights, and they had the play stopped, and he was able to make a throw to a guy who was inexplicably wide open down the field and convert on third down. And time and time again.
Yep. And you talk about the young guys, right? Dontavian Wicks, a 5th-round pick this year, who actually the last wide receiver taken before Puka Nacua. Romeo Doubs, a second year player who I think was a 5th, 6th-round pick.
Out of Nevada, yeah.
Christian Watson, who was a 2nd-round pick. You keep going, you go down the line, and you're they just keep and they drafted, they did the same thing the Patriots did in 2020 when they drafted 2 tight ends, except they hit on both of them. Musgrave looks really good, and so doesn't Tucker Kraft. And you're man, they just, and again, you get wide receivers around you, and that makes things a lot easier. And of course, you have a good quarterback throwing you the ball, but these guys can make plays. They're athletic. They do things, and so man, they're a good team, a fun team, and they're going into San Fran, and I can't imagine them winning in San Francisco, but the way they played, you never know. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know.
Well, I think one of the other things that was important, and you saw it on that, I think it was Dontavian Wicks who caught the touchdown on that kind of in-breaker post down the seam. That play was a great example of they just cracked the code on the Dallas defense. In a lot of ways, modern NFL defenses almost work like a set of logic problems. It's less so what you see in Madden, where you're just saying, hey, do this one thing. It's more so asking the defender to look at a bunch of if-then statements in his head and look at what the offense is doing, figure out which one applies, and then execute it. And it looked like the Packers figured out what those were and then just put guys into spots where they could manipulate who was going to be covering who, and then make sure that whoever was in that matchup was somebody who would get an advantage out of it. And that Wicks touchdown was the perfect example. And Greg Olsen did a great job of breaking it down, how you Gilmore is out wide because you have a receiver out wide, and you motion a receiver inside, and Gilmore moves in, but not all the way in because he still has to defend outside. And then because the receiver comes in, an internal defender takes him, which means now Gilmore's responsible for the guy who was inside before, but he's outside. And then that guy throws something over the middle, and Gilmore, who 3 seconds ago was trying to cover a guy who's outside the numbers, is now trying to cover something at the post.
Yeah.
Just because you're able to draw that up pre-snap. And I thought that was brilliant. Really, really good stuff there. And I don't think San Francisco's defense has holes like that. I don't think they're that easy to manipulate, but if they are, we're going to find out Saturday night.
You got that right. Yep. So, all right, let's go back to the beginning, the first game of the weekend on Saturday.
I was so wrong.
Let me tell you something. We're stupid. We're all stupid. All of us were stupid. We thought the Cleveland Browns, we thought the Cleveland Browns were going to win a road playoff game. That's insanity.
See,
That's
I'm
insanity.
just well, they did. Here's the thing. My last real memory of like the Browns in the playoffs was when they went to Pittsburgh and blew them out, and then were competitive with Kansas City in the AFC Championship game. I think it was the AFC Championship game, and or it may have been the divisional round.
Okay.
But they were competitive with them in that game. My last memory of the Texans in the playoffs, I don't remember if it was actually the last game they were in, but it feels like they were, was when they came into all those. No, they came to New England a couple times in there and were not competitive. I think back to 2012. I think back to 2016. They were. Maybe it was like it might have been 2016. It might have been 2017. They had like a road game. Oh no, they hosted the Raiders when Derek Carr got hurt. That's what it was. It's the last time they looked semi-decent in the playoffs, I think. So to me, the Texans are the team that's been worse in the playoffs as of late. And I just kind of
it's just the Browns.
Did they lose to the Josh Allen Bills too in 2019, 2020?
They might have, yeah. He had some outrageously bad interception or fumble or whatever. I think they actually beat him. Didn't they beat him with like TJ Pinder or something like that? No, TJ Pinder's right.
TJ Pinder's
TJ Yates.
Yes,
TJ Yates.
I've realized that I've done this entire thing and I've actually forgotten the real last time the Texans were relevant in the playoffs because they did win that game. They went to Kansas City and went up 24-0.
That's right, and then lost. That's right.
And not only did they lose, they got blown out after being up 24-0. So yeah, no, the Texans to me are this team that goes to the playoffs and loses. And
I know, but they have Stroud now. The Browns are still the Browns. You know,
I thought that Browns defense was going to carry them, and they did not. Shout out to CJ Stroud. We'll see if it continues in Baltimore.
No shot they beat Baltimore, but good for Houston.
I wouldn't say that. They played week 1, and it was a very competitive game.
I know, but Baltimore is just a wagon right now.
Yeah, I think Baltimore has improved since then, and I think they're going to beat them. But the fact that this has been kind of close and competitive once, when it was Stroud's first ever game in the NFL on the road against that defense.
True.
I don't think he's scared of the bright lights. So I think this might be close for 3 quarters at least. End up being 10 points in the fourth.
That's a great point. So the second game, we don't even have to talk about. I mean, honestly, the second game of the weekend, it's like we don't even have to talk about it. We knew exactly what was going to happen. Everyone knew exactly what was going to happen. The Dolphins were going to go into friggin' Arrowhead. Thank you. I was trying to say
Geha Field or whatever it is.
And, whoever. It's Arrowhead. And get their doors blown off by the Chiefs. And that's exactly what happened. They didn't look like they wanted to be there. They weren't. I mean, it was a joke. It was a joke of a game. And the Chiefs, the Chiefs had some fun with it and crushed them.
Well, they got the Dolphins. You look at that team composition. Their offensive line is awful. They've only won running the ball this year because they can do it schematically. It's not because the guys are good. And their quarterback is just not that athletic.
Right.
He doesn't elevate the team around him. He's not a bad quarterback, but he does not elevate the guys around him at all. He doesn't create or anything. So every single play is essentially decided based on what the pre-snap look is and if you called the right play for the situation. That's what the Dolphins do. And it's a lot easier to win in those situations when it's week 4 and nobody knows what your tendencies are when you've played 17 games and everybody knows what you want to do.
Or you're playing inside or
in warm weather or whatever. Right. Yeah, and defensively, all their guys got hurt. Like everybody on the edge got hurt for them. And against this Kansas City team, that's basically the worst thing that could have happened to you, especially in the game. It's going to be this physical. And, I kind of thought Isaiah Pacheco was going to carry a lot of the day because who the hell wants to tackle that guy when it feels like it's negative 25 degrees out? Because he's not feeling it. He was going to run right through your face.
Yeah.
And who thought that the Dolphins were going to be able to do anything on offense? Their only chance was going to be to somehow find a way to run the ball, I think, because Tua is not going to throw well in that weather. And from the first snap, you could see the offensive line wasn't about it, and that was the ball game.
Right. Yeah, I know. So it was great to see. And look, I think at a certain point, you have to wonder, can that Miami team get over the hump? You're talking about the Miami Dolphins haven't won a playoff game since 2001, 2000 season, but 2001. It's been 23 years since they won a playoff game. And so they've been good and they've gotten there, but they don't have enough. And
they need a new quarterback. They need a new quarterback.
That's Ashton. What Ashton just said. Let Miami pay that overrated QB. They're going to have to make a decision on Tua this year.
And that's the thing is that I think that this team got as far as they did because Mike McDonald is a crazy, crazy good head coach and very good at what he does. And that roster had obvious holes, and it was just going to catch up with them at some point. If you have a quarterback in the NFL in 2024 who can't create out of structure, then your entire offense is only as good as what your structure is, plus your ability to create, to turn 50-50 plays into positive things.
Right.
Which kind of is a game-by-game basis. You're only going to have a couple of those plays every game, and if all of them go for you, then you're going to have a chance to win. But that's been the issue with the early, not the early, but like the McVay offenses under Jared Goff. They weren't bad. They were just only as good as the offense designed was. And that Patriots-Rams Super Bowl, the Rams offense got figured out by, I think it was the Bears and the Lions back-to-back earlier that season. Yeah. And after that, anybody who could run that scheme and picked up on it on tape ran that, and they played a lot worse. And by the Super Bowl, they knew they had nothing on it. You watch the NFL Films clips of Bill Belichick on the sidelines of that game, and it's, they're up by 7, and the Rams are trying to drive to go tie the game.
And they got no shot.
No panic ever. Yeah. At no point does anybody on that defense think the Rams are scoring. Right. Belichick literally comes over and he goes, "We know what they're going to do. Everybody just, go out there and do what we practiced, and we're going to be good."
Right.
And that's, other than a screen pass to Brandon Cooks on like the first play that almost got picked off.
Yep.
That's they got stopped on that last drive. So that's where Miami feels at this point. And I think I'm curious, as a football fan, not a Patriots fan, I'm curious to see what the next steps are, because they're in a really weird position. And
it's going to be interesting.
They need a better quarterback if they want to get better. That is their next step. I don't know how they get there, and I don't know what they're going to do with their cap space, because I don't think they have much. I think they're over the cap for next year.
I think so too. By the way, Zion McCollum is playing 4D chess right now. Okay, Zion McCollum is a corner for the Buccaneers. Okay, let me just tell you about
him in the draft.
I love Zion McCollum. By the way, he's a freak, absolute freak.
Yeah.
But let me tell you why he's playing 4D chess. Okay, this man went offsides, or I'm sorry, lined up offsides on an extra point attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Hit the extra point attempt. Okay. The Eagles said, "Let's take that extra yard. We'll do the tush push or the brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it, and we'll get 2 points instead of 1." What did they do? They stopped
it.
The Eagles just attempted a field goal. 4th and 10. Zion McCollum, once again, lined up offsides. He hit the field goal. Well, what did they do? They took the penalty, wiped the 3 points off the board, went for the touchdown, didn't get it. And so twice, this man is lined up offsides. But
that's worked out for them.
It's wiped out points. So that's 4 points that Philadelphia would have that they don't have now because of Tampa's defense stepped up after. So just playing 4D chess.
I don't even hate Philly's decision making there either. It's just one of those where, like, the players have to execute it, and they're not. That's the thing with Philly. They haven't. We're going to jump ahead a little bit in the wild card discussion, but one of my takeaways from this is, what teams are looking for new quarterbacks. I think Miami needs to be considering it. Pittsburgh, obviously, after the way they lost, needs to be considering it. Cleveland, I have no idea. They cannot get rid of that Deshaun Watson contract, so they should be looking for a new one, but they will not be, I don't think, unless you draft somebody in the middle and mid rounds and just have an actual QB competition.
Yeah.
And the other team here, we'll see what happens, but I'm not going to put all the blame on him because of all the disarray we have seen in Philadelphia. But I think it's fair to have some questions about where Jalen Hurts is. Yeah. He's not a bad quarterback, but it's hard to look at the way he's played and say he's like a top 10 quarterback. Yeah. And if you got a guy who's in that 11 to 15 range as a starter, how much do you pay him? Do you want to pay him? Because Jalen Hurts does do things out of structure, and he does elevate you in certain ways that other guys do not. But you also haven't necessarily seen the consistency with him.
He's already been paid, sir. He's already been paid.
But I mean, like, where you go with this going forward? Like, do you keep paying him, or do you?
He got a 5-year extension through 2028. He's already paid.
I know that. I'm saying, do you keep paying him?
Yeah,
or do you
saying like
trade him, move on, and do it in Jared Goff it. Which I don't think that's not a discussion you actually have until after next season at the earliest.
Next season. Right.
Yeah. But that's one of those where, it's he's not the reason that the Eagles are where they are, and he's done some really good stuff to help them win ball games. And he has unique aspects to his game that are hard to defend. But there are moments in his game that make you question how high his ceiling is, where he is in the development curve. And we've seen the Eagles before. They are very willing to move off guys if they don't think he's the guy. They drafted Jalen Hurts with Carson Wentz still on the roster. They're not going to hesitate to rip the Band-Aid off if they lose confidence in him. So
100%. Yeah. And that's the right move, by the way. You have to be able to do that with the quarterback.
Well, and I think if you're asking the question, is our guy our franchise quarterback? By the time they're done with their rookie deal, you have your answer to that question. I'm very much a proponent of you should be very aggressive with the quarterback situation because you can never be too good at the position. Right. And being mediocre or just good can be a ticket to always being in the divisional round and never further.
100%. It's my guy, Austin Gale. I already mentioned. That's what he always, a good quarterback is the worst thing you can have in the NFL. So, all right, let's go to the Bills game, Bills-Steelers game. And this is to quote the great Dan Shaughnessy. This was the March of the Tomato Cans. The Steelers never had a real chance of beating the Bills. They're a joke. The Steelers stink. They're not good. The Bills kind of Billsed it up for a little while. They kept it close. They made some stupid mistakes. They, kept the Steelers in the game, and the Steelers are well coached and they play hard and they, do all the things, but they didn't really have a chance against the Bills. They didn't cover the 10-point spread, which we both picked Steelers plus 10. I kind of held my nose on that one and just said, was 10 points. That's a lot. But they ended up winning by 14. But next week is going to be really interesting, right? You got Kansas City going into Buffalo. Patrick Mahomes has never even played a road playoff game. So that's going to be really interesting to kind of see what they do and how he does in that situation. I think it's going to be, I don't know who the hell I'm going to root for, but
Kansas City.
I guess Kansas City because I can't root for the Bills.
Well, and not only that, the fact that we've seen this is the last 5 times the two teams have met, I think, have been in Kansas City. That they just keep playing there.
Just schedule quirks and stuff, and they've played 3 playoff games there, right?
And the Bills finally getting them at home and finally having the opportunity to get over the hump and losing anyway is hysterical to me. Hilarious. I'm not worried about these Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. They have to. I mean, I don't think they're going on the road to Baltimore and beating them this year, and I don't think they could beat Baltimore and San Francisco in back-to-back games.
I agree.
So,
and Ashton mentioned that.
I want to knock out the Bills in funny fashion.
Yeah. Ashton mentioned Tomlin walked out of his press conference. That's exactly what happened. They said, they're like, any more questions? And some lady was like, I don't know who it was. Some lady was like, so Mike, during your last year of your deal, and he just walked out.
As soon as he heard the word last year, he was gone. He didn't hear the state of the question.
I absolutely
But look at the NFL this year. I mean, Belichick out. We're probably looking at Mike McCarthy out. It feels like we're looking at Nick Sirianni out. Pete Carroll's out. We might see Mike Tomlin out. Are we speculating about this now as a thing?
It's so funny. I just think it's hysterical. People hate Taylor Swift so much, and I don't understand why they hate Taylor Swift so much. And I think it's because she's always shown, I guess. But she's out there supporting him. But I think it's really interesting.
She is out there in negative degrees, swag surfing with the crowd. She's a real fan.
Right. It's great. I don't know why you're pissed about that. I get you don't like her music, whatever. But it just is what it is. I do think it's funny. Simone Biles doesn't get mentioned. She does occasionally, but she doesn't get shown and mentioned all the time.
Because nobody knows who Jonathan Owens is.
That's true. That is true. But Haley Steinfeld, they must be keeping that under wraps, and Haley Steinfeld must not be at the games because
it's been a couple of year thing.
Not under wraps. They
keep it private.
That's what I mean. She must not be at the games and supporting him and stuff like that. Maybe she is. I don't know, but she's certainly not front and center like Taylor is, right? And Taylor's out there supporting him, and I think it's great. It's fun. It's cute. They're having a good time and they're enjoying themselves and they're celebrating each other, and so. Look, I know it's annoying at times for people. It's just annoying the fact that they mentioned it so much, right? They mention her so much. That can be all right, you don't have to show her every time, right? But, that's not her fault. She's at the game. What do you want her to do? You know what I mean? So, so it is what it is. And my kids love Taylor Swift, so like whatever, I got no problem with her, and it's fine. So
I love her.
Anyways, all right. So we'll see what happens next week. I'm rooting Chiefs. I think you're rooting Chiefs too. But the Bills, as I said, it's a tomato can game. It means nothing. It means nothing. You know what I mean? It just doesn't matter. So, and by the way, if I watch a Taylor Swift, yes, if a Taylor Swift concert was on, and then there was a break in between. Like they're not showing her during the play; they're showing her between plays. What are they going to do?
I was at the same Taylor Swift show that I believe Aaron Rodgers was at, and all anybody on Twitter was talking about was that Aaron Rodgers was there, and they kept showing clips of this. This is a thing that happened. Right. They're not showing Taylor Swift at the game itself, I don't think, except for maybe once on the jumbotron. This is the TV version of it. People like her. So
she was in New England for the Patriots game. They showed Taylor Swift on the screen one time. That's it, once. And it's like she was on there for 30 seconds and see you later.
She's like,
you know what I mean?
She's like the most famous woman in the world. Like,
right. So it just is what it is. And I get the media stuff and the fact they show her on the TV. I understand that, but they're trying to keep eyeballs on the screen.
And
let me tell you something. My girls are 12 and 10 now. My 12-year-old loves the Patriots, and she's been to 3 games this year, and so she's becoming a Patriots fan. My 10-year-old's paying attention to the NFL this year. She's actually paying attention. She knows who the teams are. She knows who's playing. Do you know why? Because Taylor Swift is at the games. So she knows who the Chiefs are, and she knows who Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce. She knows all these people because of Taylor Swift. That's what the awesome. NFL is doing. That's why they're doing it.
It's fun to have more fans involved.
Right.
I always love it.
It's great, And not only are they involved, but they're starting to learn more. Then they're asking questions. And they're like, oh, yeah, this guy. Oh, yeah, I know that guy. And this guy did this. And, oh, my God, look at that guy. And he's, number 14 for the Bills. That guy's pretty good. And so all of a sudden they're learning the players. And so that to me is great. And, it starts out as casual and then they become more difficult. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm also sure I'm sure that there are people who I think it's fair to get a little bit tired of the constancy of it at points and the way the NFL kind of hangs onto her coattails. And I also suspect that by next season, things are going to be a lot more reserved about it because it's still relatively new for most of the people involved. And but yeah. All right, should we do did we hit all the playoff games?
Yeah. Oh, no. Rams Lions. That's the last one we didn't touch on.
I was so happy for the city of Detroit. I was really hoping that Matt Stafford was going to lead a game-winning drive at the end there, just because I think that would have been really fun.
So you hit Rams Lions. You picked the Rams +3. I picked the Lions -3 because I was like, I can't. Obviously you hit the Rams pick because they covered the spread, but I was so convinced that the Lions were going to lose that game. I'm just like, man, this team. I'm like, I don't really care about the Lions, but like they've been suffering for so long. They haven't won a freaking playoff game in 30 years. Like it's ridiculous. You know what I mean? And so you look at it and you're like, my God, man. And they've lost in all of these heartbreaking ways. And I'm like, but they haven't done this yet. They haven't lost to Matthew Stafford, who's the best quarterback in their history in their first home playoff games in 1993. So I was convinced at the end of the game they were going to lose, and of course they didn't, thank goodness, and held on and won. But it becomes that situation where you look at it and say, like, man, this is really, really fun. The fact that they're still doing this and the fact that they're still there, and so
I love the way
we'll see how it goes because they're playing the winner of this game. But
Tampa
Bay.
I love the way it happened. It could be good. I love the way it happened too. The winning play, they can just run the ball 3 times and punt it. And instead, second down, it's Dan Campbell sticking to his guns. That they think the run's coming, you take advantage, and you get single coverage in the passing game. And you hit Amon-Ra St. Brown, your most dependable guy, and that's your ball game. So I think that authenticity in the fact that they know who they want to be and they stick to it no matter what. Sometimes, we saw how it doesn't work out. We remember the Lions Patriots game just last season where they came in and went like 0 for 5 on 4th down or whatever. Right. And, you're going to have games like that. But when you believe in the strategy, you stick to it anyway, and you stick to your nature and you be aggressive. And this is where it gets you. And this is what this franchise needed. So
good for them.
Super thrilled for them. I saw that there was
next week.
I saw that there was a Detroit Lions blog that got shut down back after 2014 because the writers were just so depressed. They basically felt like they'd written everything there was to write about the Lions. And I saw that for the first time in 10 years, they put up a blog post earlier today. They're like, we're back. They got us back in.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
I love
so
it.
happy for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. And I'll be rooting for them next week against these Bucks.
Well,
so.
And I want to take a look at this real quick while we look around who's in the divisional round.
Yeah.
Look at the Chiefs, Texans. The Chiefs, how did they get their quarterback? They were a good team already. They got they bought on the secondhand market a former number 1 pick in Alex Smith, became a good team, and then traded up to number 12 in the draft and got Mahomes. They're playing the Texans. They got Stroud this year at number 2, and they dropped him into what we now know to be a pretty good situation. Nobody knew Nico Collins was that dude when they picked Stroud. You go to the other one, Josh Allen. Bills were a relatively decent team. They made the playoffs. Then you trade up in the draft, and you add your quarterback that way. Where do they take him at 10? I think
10.
it was.
Yeah, 10.
Yeah,
10?
That I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
something around there. That's how they.
It might have actually been 7. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Continue.
And you've got I mixed up who's playing who in here because then the other one's the Ravens. Now the Ravens had a first round pick and used it on somebody, and then came back up into the first round to pick number 32 to get Lamar Jackson. And they had, I think, already been a kind of decent team. I don't remember where they were in the Joe Flacco of it all. At that point.
But they were a decent team. They weren't a great team, but they were a decent team.
Yeah, they were a competitive team. And then
by the way, Josh Allen was number 7 overall.
Number 7. Okay.
Yep.
And then we go over to the NFC. The number 1 seed, the 49ers, obviously very good team. They have Jimmy Garoppolo. He doesn't work out. They trade up for Trey Lance. That doesn't work out. They luck into a guy with a last pick in the draft, but they keep taking shots on quarterbacks, and they have a good team. They drop a quarterback into a good situation. They're playing the Packers, who used a first round pick and sat him and developed him for years. And that was pick 24, something in that range. I think that's where Love went.
24, 26, somewhere around there.
And then the Lions and the Bucks. I mean, the Lions take on a former number 1 pick that nobody wanted, and the Bucks take on a former number 1 pick that nobody wanted, but in different ways there. But we have we've run the gamut of how you can get a quarterback in this league. So just as a lesson, like there are a lot of ways the Patriots can address this. And just because they don't trade up for a quarterback, and just because they take one at 3 or don't take one at 3 or whatever, more than one way to skin a cat. You got to build quarterback's the most important position, but you got to build a good team regardless.
Yep, that's correct. Yep. So Darius Slay's getting carted off. Looks like he's
it looked painful.
Done for the game.
So insult to injury right there, or injury to
injury to insult perhaps. Yeah. So with 6 minutes left, down 16. It's not great. And especially if they kick the field goal here, go up 3 scores, that's the end of that. So
this was over.
But anyways, so we'll see. I think the Patriots do have a lot of options. They're obviously drafting at number 3. Everyone wants them to take a quarterback at 3. I think it makes sense to take a quarterback at 3. I think you have the assets to do what some people may have suggested. So it's like a little segue, I think, into your mock draft here. So we're going to go through quick because we're already over an hour here.
Hour 50. Do you want me to walk through it quickly?
Yeah, just walk through it quickly.
And I'll give my process for...
Yeah. And you honestly, walk through it quickly.
Okay. So I am... my first mock draft here, as I sit, I am personally... I don't love the value of taking a quarterback at 3 in this class with the guys who are right now projected to be available. So it's Jaden Daniels and down the board. I like Jaden Daniels. I think he's a good prospect. My issue with Jaden Daniels is that he has a profile as a prospect that no other guy who has ever really had, at least recently, and that he's a 5-year college starter who didn't look like this until his 5th year of college. There's no historical precedent for that. Really hard to project how good he's going to be in the NFL. So at 3, we're going to, in this hypothetical, we're going to say that Patriots do not want Jaden Daniels. Somebody else does. In this case, that someone is the Atlanta Falcons. I have them trading up to number 3. The Patriots trade back to number 8. In the process, they pick up an extra second rounder, an extra third rounder, and a second round pick next year. With that 8th pick, I have a tackle. I went with Joe Alt. This could be Fashanu from Penn State. It's going to depend. I like the investment in the offensive line this early. You go through the top receivers every year. Half of them are first-round guys. Half of them are taken later. You go through the top tackles. They're basically all first-round guys.
Yeah.
And if it's in this hypothetical to Joe Alt, this dude's going to be 21 for his entire first season. He's young. He's talented. He's very good at what he does. You got a chance to lock up the left side of your offensive line, your left tackle spot for the next 15 years by making this pick. You just don't have to worry about it. That makes your life so much easier. That's what we do there. Then we use the extra the extra picks from the trade back. We move up from the top of the second round to the end of the first to take Michigan's J.J. McCarthy at the quarterback spot. I know this is a very controversial pick.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, J.J. McCarthy's going in the first round. He is the classic quarterback who's going to get a second-round grade, but if you're a quarterback with a second-round grade, that means you get drafted in the first round. That's the way that happens. If the Patriots want him, and this could be Michael Penix, if that's who you prefer. It could be if you could substitute another quarterback's name in there if that's who you prefer for it. I'm going J.J. McCarthy with this one.
Yep.
But I think I have them trading up high enough to jump Tampa Bay because Tampa Bay may want to invest in the future at quarterback, give up the 2 second-rounders to do it. And the appeal for me with McCarthy is he's been incredibly efficient and productive with not great receivers around him. And he's very young. He's got all the talent. He basically doesn't have a weakness to his game. He can do everything. The problem is none of his traits are elite level at this point, and he needs a lot more consistency. If you draft him, you are sitting him for a year and letting him learn. That is the plan. And you're signing a veteran that he can sit under. That's what you're going to do if that's the case.
Right.
After that third, go ahead.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I just think it's a fascinating kind of situation and look at what is out there. J.J. McCarthy. The hard thing for J.J. McCarthy with me is that I like him in theory. The issue that I have, and I know it has a lot to do with the guys that are catching the ball from him as well. But the issue that I have is that he attempted 10 passes in the championship game. So like it's hard when you look at a guy that played in an offense that was, run by the running game, right? Now that doesn't mean he won't be good. It's just a little bit more to project. And again, by the way, and it's so funny because people get very upset about it, people saying it's a terrible mock and so on and so forth. And I said to you, like, that's what makes it good, because you got 300 plus comments on Pat's Pulpit about it. People are pissed, right? You want people to be upset about it because this is the type of thing that we're talking about. If you get, and we've already had this conversation, right? But the Joe Thomas conversation that this dimwit,
it's
right?
the dumbest conversation.
Right? It's the stupidest thing of all time. Joe Thomas was a Hall of Fame left tackle.
What a 3 Hall of
Famers from his. It doesn't matter. You got to take a quarterback anyways. Well, no, you don't have to take a quarterback anyways. You don't. If you have a chance for a Hall of Fame player at any position, you should probably take him. That would be good.
Yeah, and I
maybe
think
Joe won't be a Hall of Fame player, but I think he has a better chance of being a Hall of Fame left tackle than Jaden Daniels has him being a Hall of Fame quarterback. I might be wrong about that, but I think he does.
And I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. over one of the tackles, but if somebody, I would take a trade back and the extra assets, and in this case, 2 extra top 100 picks, and one of them is a top 50 pick,
right?
In exchange for taking a top 2 tackle instead of a top 2 wide receiver in this draft, when they're all very good prospects. That's really good for building out your team, and being able to use those extra picks for stuff. You're going to miss on draft picks. So if you can get a lot of high quality ones, that's kind of what you have to do.
Yep.
Just saw somebody called J.J. McCarthy a pocket passer. J.J. McCarthy is not a pocket passer. He runs. He's mobile. They run straight up option plays with him. They roll him out of the pocket all the time on stuff. In the game-tying drive, the drive that ended up being part of what knocked Nick Saban out of football, that featured a long-running designed play by J.J. McCarthy.
Right.
He's not Jaden Daniels. He's not that kind of athlete, but he's a good athlete. He can run.
Right.
As people have compared him to Mac Jones, he's nothing like Mac Jones. Other than that, they're white quarterbacks that won the national title. That's where it ends. J.J. McCarthy's a better athlete. He's got a better arm. Mac was, I think, better at reading defenses and had more touch on his throw, so they're very different there. J.J. can run more. McCarthy threw more passes in college than Mac Jones did. He's a more experienced college player than Mac Jones was.
Yeah.
And JJ has been very good in third and long situations. There's concerns about him, and no quarterback prospect is perfect. But I think as a developmental guy, he's probably as good as you're going to get. And I think I'd rather take my chances with a younger developmental guy who can sit and learn with a new offensive system than an older guy who may have already peaked for what he's going to be able to do.
Right.
That's
right.
And so they'd rather have Drake May. I would take if Drake May is there at 3, you run to the podium. If Caleb Williams is there at 3, you run to the podium. You don't think about anything else. You just do it. If it's not one of those two, you got to.
Those guys aren't going to be available. So it's just
you know what? What I'll always say is this: if you're looking for a franchise player and you're counting on the Bears or the Commanders messing it up, I feel good about my odds.
That's a good point. It's a great point.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not making that deal. I'm not making that. The deal you made, I'm not making that until draft night. I might say to them, hey,
no, that's
this
you
deal
do
is
when you get on
place,
the clock.
But let's see what happens, right? So I think you're right with that. So, and listen, we're gonna have time. We don't have time right now to break down JJ McCarthy and break down who would be the best fit for the Patriots and so on and so forth.
We have some clips on here, but
I do think, when all is said and done, that you kind of go from there. And so so we'll see.
Yeah, and there's one last comment on the QB thing, and then I'll go to the rest of it because I don't know if that's an I or an L, but LO23 says that the other than Williams and Drake May, the other QBs aren't that good in this draft as prospects, and I kind of agree there. And I don't know if they're bad, but they all have red flags. Jaden Daniels is a guy who, like I said, didn't get good until he started for a while. Right. JJ McCarthy is a very thin player who doesn't have any elite traits and who has limited experience against top tier defenses, being asked to throw the ball against them. Michael Penix is a guy who really does not operate well over the middle of the field, is the oldest of all these guys and has injury concerns. And Bo Nix is also old and is running gimmick offense for most of the time he's in college. Right. None of these are great bets, but at some point you got to throw your chips in on one of them and try it.
And if you're spending 2 second-round picks on a quarterback, I think that's worth it. It's worth the value because you have to find a guy. You have to.
Yeah, and you're almost getting them for free, but you're picking up extra capital and still getting a quarterback who has upside and has first-round traits. So that's my thought there. Now, I know everybody who's listening to this in their head is thinking, what about wide receiver? That's what the next 2 picks are about. That's what the third round is about. I have the Patriots going back-to-back receivers here. The first one coming off the board, Jalen Polk from Washington. You probably saw him in the national championship game against Texas. He's physical. He's a ball winner. I think there are some similarities with him to A.T. Higgins in his profile. If he is still there on the board when this is, I believe, pick 68 is where it is. This would be a great grab for New England. He's a guy who I think probably steps in as depending on who the Patriots have at the X spot, can step in as a starter, as the X receiver on day 1. I like what they got there. And then pick 74, which is an extra one they pick up in the trade down, Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky. This dude actually caught passes from Bailey Zappi when he was a sophomore there, but he's put up a ton of yards there. They're almost all after the catch because this dude is like if Isaiah Pacheco was a wide receiver. He doesn't separate a ton down the field. He isn't the greatest guy down there, and he's a little bit undersized. But if you get the ball in his hands, he breaks tackles. He runs through guys. There's a highlight of his where he gets the ball on like a wide receiver screen RPO type thing, catches it, lowers his shoulder into a dude, knocks him down, goes right over him, and takes it 60 yards to the house. And that's the kind of player he is, who I think had that big playability, and that helps. We're going to continue the big playability in the 4th round with running back Bucky Irving from Oregon. He's fast. He is quick. I love watching this guy play on tape. He knows what he's doing to set up blocker. He's small, but other than being small, he has everything you want in a running back. He can contribute in the passing game as well. He's a good receiver. So he is the perfect complement to Ramondre Stevenson back there, and potentially allows you to spend money elsewhere in free agency next offseason if you do not want to bring Ramondre Stevenson back. But I do love the way they complement each other. And one of the things that's all over his tape, check down option, get it to him short, and he'll convert and get you first downs that way. And that's something the Patriots have been missing ever since they lost James White.
Right.
So having a guy like that, I think, would be big. We'll round it out. We got a 5th round, a corner from Washington, Jabbar Muhammad. I'm actually not entirely sure if he did enter the draft today. He posted something on Twitter that was very unclear if he was just transferring going into the draft or both. But he shows some really good traits. Washington DBs have usually been pretty good. He was very good against Oregon. He was good in the Sugar Bowl against Texas. He's a very, very smart player, and they coached him well at Washington. And that's one of the reasons why I like him in New England. 6th round, we're going Ben Sinnott. He is a tight end, kind of slash fullback from Kansas State. A little bit of an older dude. He was, I think, the 3rd best run blocking tight end in the country, according to PFF this past season. He brings it as a blocker. He can play special teams. He can be your fullback. And he was also Kansas State's leading receiver this past season. It's the 6th round. Your worst case scenario, I think, with this dude is he's going to be a good tight end 3 for you who takes up a spot on special teams too. That's a great pick at that spot in the draft. And I wrapped up here with Ladarius Henderson. He was a guy who played tackle for Michigan, but who he was at, I think, TCU and transferred to Michigan. I think that's Arizona State, and then transferred to Michigan. He's going to be a guard in the NFL, but he's a really good run blocker. He's got a nasty streak to him. And
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
look,
so
this is the thing, right? You need help at wide receiver. You need help on the offensive line. You need help at corner.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use, one of those slash type guys in a guy like Sinnott. So I think that's really cool. By the way, Jabbar Muhammad is staying in school. So
he is.
Yeah, it's an early. Yeah, they said in the last 30 minutes that Alabama was in his top 3 transfer destinations, which means he's transferring and not entering the draft.
Yeah. All right. So we'll scrap that for the next one.
Okay.
When I put this together, he's expected to go into it.
Well, that's the thing. It's tough at the beginning. I remember like a few years ago, I had put a guy in that, I think a running back that ended up going back to school. It just is what it is, So,
yeah.
Anyways, but you get kind of those spots that you need, right? And again, you talk about offensive tackle, wide receiver, offensive tackle, quarterback, wide receiver, and then running back. To get all 4 of those positions and to get multiple guys at wide receiver now as well, that's incredible, right? And so it is a good draft when you look at something like that. And someone TJ asked about Kool-Aid McKinstry. I mean, he's going to go top 10. So he's not, maybe not top 10, but he's going to go top 15.
One of the things that I found interesting is that a lot of the guys are starting to come around into this idea that he isn't even the best corner prospect from Bama. They have Terrion Arnold.
Yeah,
I think he was a guy who broke out mid-season and kind of took it to the next level. Curious to see how that goes. I like both of those guys. They're not on the level that like Christian Gonzalez was last year.
You're not drafting one. You're not drafting anyone in the first round, anyways, because you drafted Christian Gonzalez last year. So I think that the big thing for me is that when you look at the Patriots draft, if you walked away from that draft, you may not like some of the names on there, right? You might look at it and say, yeah, JJ McCarthy sucks. And, I can't believe we drafted a tackle at number 8 and we traded down and what the hell. Does that draft make the Patriots significantly better than they were last year? And the answer to that question is yes. The answer to that question is definitively yes.
Well,
and that's all I can look at and just say, well, it made them better. Yeah. And maybe we can argue about the players, but it makes them significantly better, and it makes the offense significantly better than it was last year. And I think that right away, is saying, all right, I'm okay with it.
And I think more importantly, it sets you up for future moves that you can make. when we're talking about if they have that offensive tackle lined up, and let's say the quarterback doesn't work out, but you get a tackle who can be your guy for a while, and say one of the wide receivers turns into a wide receiver 2 level guy for you, and the running back ends up being good and the tight end is functional. Now you're at a spot where you go into the next year and all right, we have really solid depth at a lot of spots and we feel good about the offensive line. Now we can be more aggressive. Now we can go up and get a receiver if we want one. We can make a trade for a receiver if we want one. We can go up and get a quarterback or whatever it is we want to do. That's the key, because you're not doing this all in 1 year. Unless the draft I just did happens and JJ McCarthy's a quarterback 1 from day 1 and both of the receivers are elite at the NFL level and the tight end is a tight end 1 and all that stuff. Unless all that stuff happens, it's going to be a couple of years. So we'll see what happens, but that's what I got now. My other takeaway from doing this mock draft, I think trading down a couple of these spots would also be good for the Patriots, because last year they had 12 picks. They make 12 picks in last year's draft, 10 picks in last year's draft. And I feel like they need another infusion of talent like that with this new regime, whoever the decision maker is going to be. So if you can pick up extra capital in this draft or even for the future by making small moves down the board, I think that is something that kind of has to happen, because you need a lot of dart throws here. You need it. You got so many spots you're trying to fill. And even if your process is good, they're not all going to be great players. So you want as many shots as you can get.
Yeah. Yep. True. So we'll see. And look, again, for the people yelling that, it's got to be Drake May, it's got to be we see you. We see you, old man Mob. We see you, other people that have said it. And I don't blame you for feeling that way. Yeah. And again, as you said,
better
Matt,
quarterback
Drake May is your QB2. So just so you guys understand what's going on, we are going to alternate mock drafts throughout the offseason. So every 2 weeks on Pat's Pulpit, on Monday, there'll be a mock draft that comes out. So one of them will be Matt's, one of them will be mine, and we'll go back and forth throughout the offseason, and we'll go back and forth. And we might do a joint one by the end. I'm not sure the timing and how many weeks are. We haven't really planned it out, but maybe we'll do a joint one as our last one or whatever, right? Or maybe we'll do a full first round mock draft. Who knows, right? But the idea is that we're going to give you a bunch of different looks at a bunch of different options for what the Patriots could do. For those of you that are yelling about the quarterback, you're going to like mine in a few weeks. We'll just say it. We'll leave it at that. Okay.
Yeah. And
we can go back and forth. And I think that the reason why we do these things is because, number one, we want to kind of simulate what it looks like in a real draft. And I think the big value for me in doing mock drafts is not the front. The front end guys are fine, but to me, it's the back end guys. It's the guys in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round that no one's ever heard of before. Because if you're watching Mel Kiper Jr., he's not talking about a 5th round wide receiver or a 6th round running back. He's not talking about any of those guys. He's talking about the guys at the top of the draft, because who cares about that guy, right? And so I think for me, I look at it and think, okay, that can be the situation where, you learn about these guys and we can talk about those players. And so we'll go from there. So anyway, so that's what I'd look at least.
Well, I just brought this up to sort it, but we look at receiver, the top like 20 receivers in receiving this year. I mean, Tyreek Hill is at the top of that list. He was a day 3 pick, although that was for off-field reasons. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a day 3 pick. Puka Nacua, day 3 pick, was on this list. I think DJ Moore was a 2nd round guy. He was a 1st round.
DJ Moore was a 2nd round. I'm pretty sure it was a 2nd round pick.
No, I have it up right here. He was 24th overall.
Oh, it was 24th. Okay.
Yeah. Who am I? Oh, AJ Brown. AJ Brown was 2nd round. Nico Collins was 2nd round. Yep. Stephon Diggs, 5th round. Michael Pittman Jr. was 2nd round. George Pickens was 2nd round. DK Metcalf was 2nd round. There's a lot of guys who are not 1st round picks or not even top 10 picks who are leaders in receiving.
Yep.
So there's a lot of ways to attack that, and being able to get an elite receiver is kind of the goal here. And if you can get an elite receiver, sometime after the first round, that's huge. That's what we're looking for. And the only way the best way to do that is to draft a lot of them.
Yeah. Yep. It's true. So,
yeah.
All right, let's get the heck out of here. We've been here for an hour and a half. Thank you for sticking in with us. Obviously, as you can see, Philadelphia lost, got smoked, ended up by Tampa. Who knows if they're going to blow it up there? No. I have no idea. And I'm really fascinated to see where it plays out for the Patriots, or where it plays out for Bill Belichick. I'm sorry, because he obviously already interviewed with Atlanta. They've made that public, obviously. But if Philly fires Nick Sirianni, and if Mike McCarthy can't be the coach of the Cowboys next year, it's just not happening. I can't imagine that's going to be the case. So if both of those jobs are open, and both of those guys are, both of those teams come calling to Bill Belichick, it's going to be really, really difficult for him to say no to either of those teams. I think it's easier. I do think that Atlanta's an easier path, right? Philadelphia just completely collapsed at the end of the season, right? They were 10-1. You're talking about they've gone 1-6 since that point, right? Because they went 11-6, did they not? So they completely fell apart. And so Tampa may go into Detroit next week and get absolutely blown out by Detroit next week. They may not, but they might. And so I look at it and think, there's a possibility that it's become untenable in Philadelphia and they're not good anymore. And so who knows? But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Belichick. And, listen, I was over here beating the drum about Atlanta a month ago, right? Saying that he should go to Atlanta because it makes a ton of sense. They don't have the quarterback yet, but they can sign a guy like Kirk Cousins or whatever. So, I do think when you have the built-in offense already in Dallas, especially with Micah Parsons, that could be interesting for a guy like Belichick. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Next week will be interesting, and we're gonna our next show is Wednesday. Is that still the plan?
Wednesday night, yes. You know what? I wonder if we should do Thursday night again or release on Thursday. Because again, this time of year, if something's going to happen, I don't know. We'll see. We'll talk about it, but either be Wednesday or Thursday.
By the next time we do it, we will have had Jerod Mayo's introductory press conference too. So that's on Wednesday, and very, very much looking forward to that. I think we're going to get some more info in the next 72 hours here about what their plan is for the next year.
I agree. So, well, anyways, guys, thanks for listening. We appreciate it, and take care, everyone.